come out to play.
What if the most dangerous threat to the cast of The Warriors wasn't a rival movie gang, but the real gangs the studio hired to protect them? And what if the most iconic line in the entire film was a last-minute, chilling improvisation that was never in the script? Tonight, we're going all city. In this video, we're counting down 20 incredible, strange, and dangerous facts about the 1979 cult masterpiece, The Warriors. We'll uncover the on-set chaos that mirrored the film's plot, the casting what-ifs that would have changed everything, and the real-world violence that made this film a true phenomenon. Can you dig it? Released on February 9, 1979, and directed by the master of gritty action Walter Hill, The Warriors is more than just a gang film. It's a hyper-stylized, almost mythical odyssey. The plot is elegantly simple. The Warriors, a gang from Coney Island, are framed for the murder of Cyrus, a messianic leader trying to unite all of New York's gangs. With every gang in the city gunning for them, they must fight their way from the Bronx back to the safety of their home turf, a treacherous 27-mile journey through a hostile, nocturnal landscape. The film was a raw nerve, capturing the urban decay and tension of late 70s New York and transforming it into a living, breathing comic book. But the story behind the camera is just as wild as the one on screen. Let's begin our countdown. Number 20. The Ancient Greek Connection. Our countdown begins with the film's very soul, which wasn't born in a Hollywood studio, but on the pages of a gritty 1965 novel of the same name by Saul Ulrich. But Ulrich's inspiration went back even further, over 2,000 years in fact. The novel is a direct retelling of Anabasis, an ancient Greek text written by Xenophon. Anabasis chronicles the story of 10,000 Greek mercenaries who find themselves trapped deep in enemy Persian territory after their leader is killed. They must fight their way through hundreds of miles of hostile land to get back home to the sea. Walter Hill loved this primal, simple structure, a group of warriors stranded, fighting their way home. He essentially lifted this ancient epic and dropped it into the urban jungle of New York City. Number 19. The Uncredited Star who became a music legend. Pay close attention to the character of Fox, the warrior with the sharp mind and braids. He was played by Thomas G. Waits. But look at the film's credits. His name is nowhere to be found. Why? We'll get to the explosive reason he was fired later in our countdown, but what's fascinating is who Waits became. After his tumultuous experience on The Warriors, he built a solid acting career, appearing in John Carpenter's The Thing just a few years later. More surprisingly, he became a celebrated acting coach, founding his own studio, and is also an accomplished musician and playwright. The man who was erased from the credits refused to be erased from the arts. Number 18. The Ronald Reagan Connection. You might think a gritty film about street gangs would be the last thing on a U.S. president's watch list. You'd be wrong. In the early 1980s, after The Warriors had achieved cult status, actor Michael Beck, who played Swan, received a completely unexpected phone call. It was from the White House. President Ronald Reagan's press secretary was on the line to inform him that the president was a huge fan of the film. Reagan apparently loved watching it at the presidential retreat, Camp David. The image of the leader of the free world kicking back to watch the baseball furies hunt down the Warriors is a truly surreal piece of pop culture history. Number 17. The famous sitcom star who was almost a warrior. The role of Vermin, the wisecracking and somewhat cynical warrior, was perfectly played by Terry Michos, but he wasn't the first choice. The role was originally offered to a young, charismatic actor who was just starting to make a name for himself on a new sitcom, Tony Danza. At the time, Danza was starring as the boxer-turned-cabbie Tony Banta in the classic TV show Taxi. The production schedules for Taxi and The Warriors conflicted, and Danza was contractually obligated to the show. He had to turn down the part, leaving the door open for Michos. It's hard to imagine anyone else in the role, but a warrior played by Tony Danza is one of Hollywood's great what-ifs. Number 16. The Tom Hanks Wardrobe Connection. The Warriors' leather vests, with that iconic winged skull insignia, are legendary. They are holy grails for collectors. But after filming Wrapped, Paramount Pictures, in typical studio fashion, didn't preserve them for posterity. They stripped the patches off the back and threw the plain leather vests into their general costume inventory to be reused in other productions. In a bizarre twist of fate, one of these screen-used vests ended up on another future superstar. In a 1982 episode of Taxi, the very show that kept Tony Danza from being a warrior, a guest starring Tom Hanks can be seen wearing one of the recycled vests. Number 15. The real injury that was hidden in plain sight. Deborah Van Valkenburg, who played the tough and world-weary Mercy, was a trooper. During the physically demanding shoot, which involved a lot of running and fighting on uneven city streets, she broke her wrist. Production couldn't stop. Instead of writing the injury into the film, the costume department cleverly hid it. After Mercy joins the Warriors, she's seen wearing a long-sleeved denim jacket that she claims she stole. The real reason for the jacket? It was used to cover the cast on her arm for the remainder of the shoot. She delivered her entire performance, including the final romantic scene on the beach, with a broken bone hidden under her costume. Number 14. The director's comic book vision. Walter Hill didn't want to make a realistic documentary about gangs. He envisioned the film as a live-action comic book. He wanted to use stylized, comic panel-like transitions between scenes to heighten this feeling. However, in 1979, this was deemed too expensive and artistically risky by the studio, so the idea was scrapped for the theatrical release. But Hill never gave up on his vision. For the 2005 Ultimate Director's Cut DVD release, he was finally able to go back and add the comic book transitions he always wanted, fully realizing his original intent for the film and giving fans a new way to experience this classic. Number 13. A leader cast the night before.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
Cyrus, the leader of the Gramercy Riffs, is only on screen for a few minutes, but his "Can you dig it?" speech is one of the most powerful moments in cinema. The role was played with electrifying charisma by Roger Hill, no relation to the director. But he was a last-minute replacement. The original plan was to cast a real, charismatic leader of an actual New York street gang to add a layer of raw authenticity. They found their man, but the night before the massive shoot in the Bronx was set to begin, he completely vanished. With over 1,000 extras waiting, the producers frantically cast Roger Hill, a theater actor who stepped in and created movie history overnight. Number 12. Swan's accidental brutality. The fight scene between Swan and the leader of the Baseball Furies in the 96th Street subway station is a masterclass in tension. The choreography was tight, but the conditions were real. While filming, Michael Beck, Swan, was supposed to swing a real wooden baseball bat, narrowly missing the stuntman playing the Fury. In one take, he misjudged the distance and connected, hitting the stuntman with full force and breaking several of his ribs. The stuntman, a true professional, didn't break character. The pained reaction you see on his face is completely real, but he finished the take before collapsing. Beck was horrified and didn't even find out the extent of the injury until a cast reunion nearly 40 years later. Number 11. The all-female gang was supposed to be deadlier. The Lizzies, the seductive and treacherous all-female gang, managed to lure some of the Warriors back to their hideout with deadly intentions. In the final film, the Warriors managed to escape. But in the original script, this scene was far more brutal. The character of Vermin was supposed to be murdered by the Lizzies, stabbed to death in their apartment. However, during filming, director Walter Hill and the writers felt that Terry Mikos had made Vermin too likable. They realized the audience would be devastated by his death, so they rewrote the scene at the last minute, allowing Vermin, Cochise, and Rembrandt to escape with their lives. Number 10. The filming location that fought back. Shooting the Warriors entirely on location at night in some of New York's roughest neighborhoods was a logistical nightmare. The production was constantly harassed by locals and real gangs. On one occasion, while filming a scene under an elevated subway track, a local gang positioned themselves on the tracks above and began urinating down on the cast and crew. In another instance, filming in an abandoned building had to be shut down because dozens of local kids swarmed the area surrounding the set and screaming "Warriors" from the windows, making it impossible to record clean audio. Number 9. The most famous gang was a Kiss tribute. Arguably the most memorable rival gang is the Baseball Furies. With their chilling face paint, pinstriped uniforms, and baseball bats, they are pure cinematic nightmare fuel. Their origin is a perfect blend of Walter Hill's personal interests. He wanted to create a gang that was both terrifying and visually striking. The inspiration came from two of his great loves: the rock band Kiss, famous for their iconic face paint, and the sport of baseball. He combined the two, creating a gang that felt both absurd and genuinely menacing, and in doing so, created one of film history's most iconic designs. Number 8. The original Bleaker ending. The film's final scene on the beach at Coney Island, with Swan and Mercy walking in the sunrise as the radio plays "In the City," is a moment of quiet, hopeful victory. But that wasn't the original ending. Walter Hill initially filmed a much darker and more somber conclusion. The original final scene took place during the day on the beach, with Swan and Mercy looking exhausted and traumatized, simply staring out at the ocean, reflecting on the night of horror they just survived. Test audiences found this ending to be too depressing, so the studio requested a more uplifting reshoot, giving us the iconic ending we know today. Number 7. The Golden Flicker Moment. A feud so bad, a warrior had to die. We mentioned that Thomas G. Waits, who played Fox, was uncredited. The reason is one of Hollywood's most infamous on-set clashes. Waits and director Walter Hill had two completely different visions for the character of Fox. Waits saw him as a more street-savvy, romantic interest for Mercy, while Hill wanted Swan to be the sole lead and romantic hero. Tensions escalated throughout the shoot. Waits would argue about his lines and motivation, and the feud became toxic. Hill, fed up, fired Waits 9 weeks into production. But what do you do with a main character who's suddenly gone? You kill him. The scene where Fox is thrown onto the subway tracks was a hasty rewrite. The person you see being thrown in front of the train is not Thomas G. Waits. It's the film's assistant director, a man with a similar build and hairstyle who had to shave his beard and step in as a body double. Waits was so angry he demanded his name be removed from the film entirely, a decision he later called one of the biggest mistakes of his career. Number 6. The movie that sparked a moral panic. When The Warriors was released, it didn't just sell tickets, it ignited a firestorm of controversy. Fearing the film would incite real-life gang violence, Paramount Pictures initially released it with a minimal marketing campaign. Their fears came true. The opening weekend saw reports of vandalism, fights, and riots breaking out in and around theaters across the country. Tragically, the violence turned deadly. A 19-year-old was shot and killed at a drive-in screening in Palm Springs, and an 18-year-old was stabbed to death at a theater in Oxnard. In response, Paramount pulled all advertising and offered to pay for increased security at cinemas. Some theaters pulled the film altogether. It was a cultural panic that cemented the film's reputation as a dangerous piece of art. Number 5. The Rogue's car was a personal ride. The rusty, beat-up hearse that the film's main villains, the Rogues, drive to the conclave wasn't a studio prop. It was the actual personal car of the film's art director. To save money on the budget, he volunteered his own unique vehicle for the shoot. One can only imagine what it was like for him to drive that car around New York City when he wasn't on set. Number 4. The most powerful gang in New York. In the film, the Gramercy Riffs are presented as the biggest and most powerful gang in the city, with Cyrus as their leader. This wasn't just a random choice. Gramercy Park is a famously exclusive, wealthy, and private neighborhood in Manhattan. The idea of the city's toughest gang naming themselves after its most elite and restricted area was a piece of clever social commentary by the filmmakers, a subtle joke about power and territory in the urban landscape. Number 3. Robert De Niro was almost the leader of the punks. The climactic fight scene in the public restroom against the roller skating gang, the Punks, is unforgettable. The leader of the Punks was played with a memorable sneering intensity by Conrad Sheehan. However, Walter Hill originally had a much bigger name in mind for the role. He reached out to Robert De Niro. At this point, De Niro was already a superstar, having won an Oscar for The Godfather Part 2 and starred in Taxi Driver. Unsurprisingly, De Niro's agent politely informed Hill that his client's fee was $1 million, a massive sum that was more than a quarter of the film's entire budget. The role went to Sheehan, and the rest is history. Number 2. The studio wanted real gangs, then got them. In a move that sounds insane today, the producers wanted to add to the film's authenticity by hiring actual New York gang members as extras, especially for the opening conclave scene. They paid them in cash daily. To prevent turf wars from breaking out on set, rival gangs were transported to the location in separate buses and kept in separate holding areas. But the line between film and reality blurred dangerously. For one scene, the production hired a real gang from Coney Island to act as security and crowd control. Halfway through the night, this gang started a riot, destroying parts of the set and causing over $100,000 in damages before the real police could intervene. Number 1. Warriors Come Out to Play was a spontaneous, chilling ad-lib. We've arrived at number 1. The single most iconic moment of the film. Luther, the psychopathic leader of the Rogues, taunting the Warriors by clinking bottles together on his fingers and chanting in a sing-song voice, "Warriors, come out to play." This bone-chilling line was never in the script. The script simply said for Luther to taunt the Warriors. Director Walter Hill felt the scene needed something more and told actor David Patrick Kelly to just come up with something. Kelly drew on a personal memory. He had a neighbor from his old neighborhood who used to taunt people using that same creepy sing-song cadence. He improvised the line and the bottle clinking on the spot. Hill loved it, the cameras rolled, and in that moment of spontaneous, creative genius, one of the most terrifying and quoted lines in movie history was born. From its ancient roots to its chaotic production and its lasting cultural impact, The Warriors is a miracle of filmmaking. It's a testament to the raw, electric energy of late 70s cinema, a film that was both a product of its time and timeless in its appeal. It captured the soul of a city on the edge and turned a simple story of survival into a modern myth that continues to fascinate and inspire audiences over 4 decades later. If you discovered something new today, illuminate our day by clicking like and subscribe to Golden Flicker so you never miss a story from behind the scenes of Hollywood. Which film or actor do you want to see us explore in the next video? Let us know in the comments below.